World History Discussions on the Traditions and Encounters Textbook, Chapter 8, Unification of China, Part 2. So now we're going to get into the meat of this chapter, but before we do, I want to review a little bit of Chapter 5, because yes, China has the longest continuous history in the world, and there was that Chinese history chapter before this Chapter 5, and I just want to review what we had. We had the Shah Dynasty, which was in power roughly 4,000 years ago, and then we had the Shang Dynasty in power roughly 3,500 years ago, and they were best known for the first Chinese writing. Then you finally had the Zhou Dynasty, the biggest of those empires, and they were in power starting around 1100 BCE and technically until 256 BCE. But as you remember, they started to collapse after 771 BCE into the Eastern Zhou when they moved their capital from Hao to Liaoyang, and that was because of nomadic invaders to the west. And then China gets in this period of chaos, the Warring States period. And the Warring States was at its peak between 403 and 221 BCE. Keep an eye on this one. They're going to unify all of China in this chapter, the Chen Dynasty. But that's what the Warring States looked like. So this was a very turbulent and chaotic time, and that's where Chapter 8 picks off, and there's Confucianism. But during this turbulent time, three major philosophies came up: Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism, and they laid the foundations for classical Chinese society. So Confucius, there he is right there. We don't actually have a picture of Confucius, but these are some of the pictures that artists would come up with, also known as Kung Fuzi, lived between 551 and 479 BCE. Same era that way to the west, the Persian Empire is rising. I like to connect dots, even though there's zero to do with those two, just kind of bringing it into the same time period as the last chapter. And he came from an aristocratic family in the state of Lu in northern China, which is pretty near the city of Khufu in Shandong province. I've been to Khufu. When I lived in China in 2011 and 2012, I was in Dali, Yunnan province, and unfortunately, that isn't really in historical China. First history I know of Dali was the Nanzhao Kingdom, talking like 700s CE, contemporaries with the Tang Dynasty. I'm going to mention them in Chapter 13 when we talk about the Tang and the Song Dynasty, that their contemporaries in southwest China were the Nanzhao and later Dali kingdoms, but that's way later. At this point, Yunnan was, what's now Yunnan province, was pretty far southwest of China proper. But on my first trip to China, on the 2009 trip when I went with my college, we went and saw Khufu, the home city of Confucius in Shandong province. We got to see a lot of the historical and culture stuff, which was awesome. Shandong is way to the northeast of Yunnan. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. But Confucius attempted to hold a political post at the Lu court, but was turned down. This is likely because he was a strong-willed man and hard to get along with. He'd complain bitterly if his rice was undercooked or overcooked, for example, and his beliefs for the political benefit of his values, he wouldn't change his beliefs in order to compensate for what the people would want, and as a result, he never got that post that he wanted. He couldn't advance beyond the minor political posts, and eventually Confucius left Lu, and he spent 10 years traveling China in search of more prestigious opportunities, but he found none that were willing to accept him, again, because he was a very uncompromising man. As a result, he returned home to Lu in 484 BCE, bitterly disappointed, and he died 5 years later. However, although he never became a powerful minister or politician, Confucius had served as an educator and political advisor, and it was here where he really left his mark on Chinese society. He had numerous disciples who aspired to the political careers, and some of them wrote Confucius' sayings and teachings in a book called the Analects. Confucius' core belief was the best way to promote good government was to fill positions with people who were well educated and extremely conscientious. The Junzi was a group of superior individuals. More on this next.